also ask you this, you know, in the context of giving the FRBM Act much more teeth, you know, as I pointed out, and you admitted yourself, that it has its flaws. Is there a need to have an independent council that monitors the effective implementation of the FRBM Act? Because Parliament clearly hasn't done that job.
Well, the more you have in terms of councils or regulations, the more inflexibility you will inject into the system. And the Western world has moved away from inflexible norms to flexible norms. I mean, look, for instance, if it was not the United States of America, how would the world have looked upon the pursuit of this unconventional monetary policy? I mean, so I think that countries and sovereigns need flexibility, and there are only so much that you must bind them to. I mean, I'm not saying that in any way this reflects the kind of stuff which will come out of the FRBM committee. That the committee will certainly need to deliberate. But this idea of the council, which you are mentioning, is one of the recommendations I know of the 14th Finance Commission.
And the 13th Finance Commission.
And the 13th. This is where I note. And by the way, who headed the 13th Finance Commission? Now, out of curiosity, it was, I think, Vijay Lakshman Kelkar.
Right.
Vijay Lakshman Kelkar is also the author of the FRBMs, and so two successive finance commissions have mentioned this. But I think I'm only talking in terms of, is the world moving towards excessive regulation, or is the world wanting the sovereigns to have greater flexibility? This is a generic debate on which I think there could be very different points of view. And also I think that I do want to say that, you know, I don't want to prejudge at all in any way. That's for the committee. I'm privileged to have such an outstanding committee which has Urjit Patel, Arvind Subramanian, Bose, and Atin Roy as members of that, and each one of them have done a lot of work on this. They're exceedingly knowledgeable. I do want to say that if you look at the initial first FRBM Act, the 3% magic number and the rationale of it is, if I may say so, somewhat opaque, without wanting to cast any thing that it is not intellectually, intellectually sound.
I started by talking about Montek Singh Ahluwalia, and he says that. He said that, you know, there's no explicable, justifiable reason for that 3% number.
So, and by the way, incidentally, I think that I have still to delve into the archives more deeply, but I would say prima facie that this seems to have been just a number taken from the Maastricht Monetary Stability Pact. The Maastricht Agreement in Europe, which talks of the 3% for purposes of monetary union, which is qualitatively different than when you begin to talk in terms of growth. And emerging markets, for them, growth, poverty, employment, these are crucial issues where one kind of a paradigm which the Western world has followed may not be mechanically replicable. For another reason too, that even in the Maastricht Treaty, if you look at it, it talks of 4 criteria. It talks of fiscal deficit, it certainly talks of debt sustainability as a very important component, it talks of interest rates, and it talks of inflation. So I think it is 4 set of parameters which is the basis of the Maastricht Treaty. Now I have written, and that is purely not in my capacity as the chairperson of this group, for which I have been privileged, the government has thought it fit to appoint me. But I have written 2 pieces in the Hindu on this to say that chasing just one fiscal deficit target may be even a violation of the Maastricht stability itself, which had multiple criteria and not one criteria. So I think the target must be macro stability, which is not contingent on one particular criteria. And I don't know, but I think that these are matters on which we will need to study and consider very carefully and consult all stakeholders. Consult, for instance, international institutions, consult, for instance, rating agencies which look at some of these things very carefully, consult and look at the best international experience on this. And these are some of the papers which
the committee will look at,
which the committee is commissioning and has commissioned for purposes of being prepared for the consideration of the committee on the multiplicity of this, including, for instance, the widest possible consultation with stakeholders.
Okay, so the committee has already commissioned these papers.
Is proposing to commission these papers on some of these core issues, some of which we have talked about.
So would it be fair then to say that broadly these would be the 4 pillars that could drive the overhaul of the FRBM Act?
Perhaps not, because what I mentioned was just episodic, illustrative. But we do want to have a look at the international experience, international benchmarking, and see it in not only the Indian context, but see, unfortunately, the Indian context has got its own special problems, and these need to be country-specific, circumstance-specific, historically, to adopt one set of paradigms necessarily. These are matters which require a deeper consideration.
Sure. Again, without getting into any business of prejudging, 31st October is by when you need to give in your recommendations to the government. Do you believe that perhaps as early as the next budget, we could see movement on the back of the recommendations that your committee makes that the government would like to take forward?
The committee's mandate is to submit its recommendations or its report to the government. It is entirely government's prerogative what it wants to do with the committee's report, junk it in the waste paper basket, seek the committee's views on something or the other, reflected or not reflected. These are the prerogatives of the finance minister and the prime minister. Our mandate is to submit the recommendations, and we will adhere to the time frame of the 31st of October.